Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Steve Selling. This is the Raging Verbalist number 183 for those of you keeping track. If you're new, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're a long-termer, thanks for coming back. We're always happy to see you. I guess see you is kind of a cool idea. I don't know. It's not like, we have that magic mirror and we can actually see you out there, but we hope you're out there. Raging Verbalist is a topic that I find necessary to talk about, and we bring that about. You can always check us out on YouTube, also on our Facebook group, which is Position to Win Book Facebook group. You can always ask questions, and who knows, you might get them answered over here. Be respectful though, because as always, my lovely, the ever lovely Sandra will be here to stand in for you and ask the questions of me so we can get this going. Sandra, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good. I mean, we're now into summer, and right. So now we have summer, and we're gonna see it get hotter. But the sadness is that we've already passed the longest day of the year, and it's downhill all the way to December. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, that's not very positive.
You're like somebody stepping up in the Optimist Club. I just want to thank everybody for being here. Just want to point out to you that you're one day closer to death. Okay, with that, let's get started. So.
All right. With that, we're talking about tipping. So should you tip or not tip? That is the question.
Well, I think if you want to get great service and you understand how to tip, and hopefully by the time we get done, you'll understand how to tip more, better. That's bad English. Anyway, you'll understand how to do it correctly and do all that. Now, before we go too far, when we were working on this, I said, now, I don't want anybody to get confused because, of course, Sandra is from Nebraska. And then I said something that only somebody who would not know. And I said, so we have to make sure we don't mislead people that we're going to be talking about tipping cows over. And she had a very strong visceral reaction. So I'm going to ask her that question, which is, Sandra, is cow tipping real or just an urban or actually a rural myth?
It is a myth. There is no cow tipping. Sorry. For anyone out there wanting to do it, you cannot. Out of luck.
So if you go to push on a cow, they will not just go boom and tip over. So
probably kick you, maybe, possibly. Watch out. That hurts.
Okay. All right. So see, we've cleared that up, and that's a bonus for all you who are watching Raging Verbalist. And okay, now we've cleared that up. Okay, good to know. Right? And for those of you who had nefarious thoughts about doing that, the answer is no, and don't do that. Cows will be irritated, and they could injure you. They're big, and they could do something. So, all right,
Correct.
What is the next question that deals with our version of tipping?
All right. So what do you think of the latest craze where kiosks are suggesting a tip?
Well, when you first brought this up to me, I, of course, jumped to that. You go to like Starbucks, you go to some of these places, and the little, and I found this like in a frozen yogurt place, is that the pad asks you if you want to tip the staff. And then you had to point out to me that no, there are kiosks where there are no people around, and you're tipping, well, who knows what. So I would say if it's no people, probably no tip. If there are people, think about a tip because you'll probably do better. But I know that you have strong feelings. I assume that you do not tip self-serve kiosks, right? Am I correct on that?
Correct. Yeah. If there's nobody around and I'm doing all the work, sorry, kiosk, you're not getting a tip. No offense to those workers who probably stock the shelves or something, but if it's a kiosk, nobody's around, no go. But if there's somebody there helping me, I don't mind giving them a tip. So there you go.
Tell them, make sure that you eat in moderation. Tips like that usually don't go as well as monetary. So yeah.
Don't eat yellow snow. Yeah, one of those things.
Yeah, probably not a good idea either.
Right.
Ooh. Anyway, so where do we go from there?
All right. In your experience, do most people know how to tip properly?
The answer to that is absolutely not. I think that most people have no clue of how to tip. It's a cultural thing. It's a family thing. It's an economic level thing. So all these kind of work against you, and I think that most people don't know how to tip. And I would say that because they don't know how to tip, they end up getting lousy service, or they end up getting people who are not very helpful, and things don't get done. And all I can tell you is that once you learn how to tip properly, it will actually work to your benefit. And you should probably hope that, well, we want as many people to watch this as possible. Love to have this thing go viral and all that. But I can tell you that most of the time people truly, absolutely, without a doubt, suck at tipping. They suck at tipping. And I learned this from an early age. My grandfather on my mother's side was a waiter his entire life. And in fact, when he was working in New York at the Lobster Restaurant Midtown, which was kind of an upscale, and it was an upscale restaurant, and he served all kinds of people. And one of the people that he ended up serving was a very famous singer, or about to be a very famous singer, by the name of Frank Sinatra. And they get through with the whole shooting match, don't know what the bill was, don't know any of the details. All I know is that, well, Frank wasn't like the fan favorite at our house, because Frank left my grandfather a dime. Now, I understand money was different in those days, but left him a dime. Now, I understand that later on, Sinatra became a big tipper, but I can tell you that there are some people who leave the equivalent of that now, and all of that, and that is just crazy. In fact, one of my favorite Vegas stories, I was sitting there at lunch one day with a mobby kind of a guy, and and this guy we'll just call him Bobby. And I whipped out this little calculator that I had brought with me, because I had been selling calculators before I moved to Vegas. And it was a Sharp company tip calculator. You plug it in, and then you hit tip, and then it said percentage, and you enter in no decimal places. You put in 15, and you hit it again, and it would give you 15% of that, just in case you're mathematically challenged. And he's looking at me, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out the tip. And he says, what the hell is that? And I said, it's a tip calculator. It helps you make sure that you got the right tip. And he looks at it and he goes, that looks pretty interesting. And he goes, how does it work? And I try to describe it to him, and he goes, all right, let me teach you something. As he took my calculator, cool little calculator, flung it in the restaurant. I mean, again, nobody was going to tell this guy not to do that. Flings it away, and he goes, let me tell you, tips work like this. You got paper, John. You got $1, $5, $10, $20, $50, $100. He goes, that's all you need to know about tipping. Now, you got to have bills. That's what you got to know. I mean, nobody wants change. Everybody wants that. So from that standpoint, from that point on, I became a paper tipper and have done that ever since. But by the way, people always say to me, did you get the calculator back? Never saw it again. So don't need it, because my life became a lot simpler once do that. And that, to me, taught me a valuable lesson in how to tip properly.
And where did you learn the fine art of tipping?
Well, actually, I started at a very young age, because my grandfather, who lived with us until sadly he passed, was a waiter in Colorado at the Oxford Hotel. And I was one of those very different, and as anybody who's watched this channel knows, a little different thinking. And I love the stories about how he would interact with people and how he would talk to people, even though I was quite young. And one of the things that he did is that as a waiter, and this is in the 1950s and the early 60s, is that this is a time when you would have couples would double date, and they were probably in their 30s, maybe in their 20s, and they're feeling their oats, they're making good dough. So they're going to go out to a fancy restaurant. And so they would come in, men, nicely attired in suits and, ties. And then the women, dressed up. I guess the expression in those days would be all dolled up. And they would sit there and they would be, of course, going to order drinks. And my grandfather would take their order for whatever drinks they were going to have, mixed cocktails, and then he would leave. And then before he would bring them the drinks, he would come back to the table and he would look at these two women who were sitting there, right? Two couples. And he would say, the management says that I must check your ID to confirm that you're old enough to drink alcohol or order drinks or however that pattern would go. And of course, these women who were not old, but getting older, thinking about age more so, just loved it. Husbands always groaned. And in fact, that was part of it. If the husbands rolled their eyes and groaned, he knew that he was good, that this was a thing. So he used to do that all the time. Check would come. One of the guys would pay the meal because, again, that was how the deal was worked out. And they would always leave like a 10% tip. Now, invariably, he would pick everything up. Everybody leaves. It's an adequate tip. And then one of the two women, one of the ladies, would come back to the table and press into his hand a bill, and whether it was $1 or $5, $5 was the most, and would say, "Thank you very much," because of course, what a compliment to have somebody say, "You're too young to be drinking, aren't you?" And that worked, and that always stuck with me. So I knew it at that point in time. What I didn't know was the whole paper thing, which I learned in Vegas. So I had the basis of that and what that meant and what it would mean. Now, what that means is that every single time you do that, you are actually doing something that I talk about in my book. And what we're going to do is say, this is what you should do, is that you should go out and get, because most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it, but it's the position to win. If you learn how to tip properly, you're going to position yourself as somebody very different than the vast majority of people, because most people really suck at it. By the way, it's available physically at the positiontowinbook.com website, positiontowinbook.com, and you can ask for it to be autographed, and we'll do that. Also, you can go and get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can get it physically, or you can also get it in Kindle, Nook, and Apple iBooks. And then on the other side is you can get Remote Work for a Better World, and that is available exclusively on the Kindle store. So you can do that. Also, if you want any hot beverage to taste better, the Raging Verbalist mug is going to do it for you. It does it for me every single time. That's good. And you can get that and at the, of course, positiontowin.com. All right. So let us get back to it. Sandra, what's our next question?
All right. Have you ever used tipping to decide whether or not you should hire someone?
Well, not getting into the full-blown mechanism of how to hire people, and I have, if you're going to do turnarounds, which I've done a lot of turnarounds, is that you fire a lot of people. I like to say I've fired more salespeople than most people will ever meet in their lifetime. But what I also do, that means I have to hire a lot of people. So I call it the 3-meal rule. Should always hire somebody. If you're going to hire somebody, have at least 3 meals with them to see how they react and what they do. But more importantly, how they deal with the wait staff and how they deal with those kinds of situations and circumstances. So one of the things that I will often do is I'll buy them the meal, and they'll say, well, I got to do something. And they'll say, well, I'm going to leave the tip. And invariably, the cheap tippers, I will not hire in a sales function, because the cheap tippers, the people who struggle with understanding that they're in a service business and they're doing these things, is that you want to make sure that you do it right and that you go a little bit further. I would say I lean more towards over tipping than under tipping. And I'm talking about, kiosks and robots, but I'm talking about real people, because you will get much better service also, if you go to the same restaurant or same establishment over time, people will start to get to know you and it will change things dramatically. So I have absolutely used it to hire people. Had one guy who took out his phone, calculated it to the penny. Well, you subtract out the alcohol, you subtract out the tax, you subtract out the appetite. Done. In fact, one of the worst clients that I ever signed and did have a long-term relationship with was a guy who had come out of, and again, I understand frugality, but this guy wanted to impress people. Well, you're never going to impress people if you're not going to be able to, tip and get what you need to do. So he was a guy who left a very big high-tech company, had a lot of money, and the rubber band was always tight. I always joked and said that if he opened his wallet, bats would fly out because that's how long it had been since it was really cracked open.
All right. And can you give examples of advanced tipping?
And this is something that most people don't even know about. So I'm doing an event in Vegas, one of my events, and we're going to go into a restaurant. And frankly, it's a very, I would highly recommend. It's a nice steakhouse called the Capitol Grill. It's right on the Strip, and they have a private room. And I show up to go to the private room, and there's always a little squabbling and all that. But you got to convince them that you're going to order enough. And to serve a room full of people, a whole group of people, you need a lot of servers, you need a lot of people. And of course, one of the things that they're thinking is that, okay, how is this, how's this going to work out? How much effort should we put into this? Is this the group of, chintzy people, or this people are going to do something? So when we go to sit down, I said, well, who's going to be the head waiter? Who's going to be the head server? I know you're going to have other people. And I walk up to him and I say, okay, here's how this deal is going to work. We're going to end up splitting it, which I know is going to suck. I don't know how these guys are going to be tipping. And I gave him $100 bill and I said, make sure everybody knows that there's that. And I'll top up the tip at the end if these guys don't put in enough dough. And we got crazy good service. And especially after a very long day, everybody loved it. They were amazed at the service. We had our own private room and we went, it was just exciting how well it came together. The point of it is the fact that advanced tipping worked without question. And my suggestion is if you have a special event and you're going to do anything, make sure that you think in terms of doing that advanced tipping. Now, that doesn't mean that you then take out the calculator, and the slide rule and a supercomputer to figure out, well, am I over tipping or not? Because in those kind of occasions, over tipping is going to get you the result that you want, which is why I don't understand why people don't get it, but they don't. So that's why you're getting it here. You will make friends and you will be known at every single place that you want to go. Also, when I have had people say to me, John, how do I get the best seats in Vegas? Or how do I get into that VIP line, assuming you're not, connected or you don't have, big VIP status because you play a lot? And the answer is always cash. Cash will get you there faster than anything else.
And what's one of the most unique things you did in tipping?
So I happened to be in Texas, and my wife's nephew got married to a local, and we're really close to the border. And the bride's father is named Caesar. Now Caesar, nice guy, he's meeting all these people mostly from Ohio, so it's kind of a little awkward. And anyway, so I'm sitting there and I'm talking to Caesar, and he's going to drive us to Juarez. So we're going to go from El Paso, we're going to cross the border into Juarez. And for those of you who have never driven in a border town in Mexico, it can be a little unnerving. Caesar is from Mexico. He speaks the language, speaks Spanish significantly better than English. And I said, well, I want to help out by helping out with the parking. Now, they have all these meters, but understand that every meter or every so many meters is controlled by people, because if you don't do this, there's going to be like just a grease spot where the car used to be. So we get there, and Caesar says, John, you may not understand how to do it. I said, well, let me show you. So I walk up to this guy and I said, okay, we're going to park here. And the guy goes, yep. I take out a $20 bill, got his attention instantly. I said, but we need the car washed. We need it really cleaned well. The guy says, oh, yeah, si, senor. Caesar and this guy communicate back and forth, back and forth. I don't speak Spanish. John, he's happy with it. And I take the $20 bill and I tear it in half. I hand it to him and I said, now tell him that he gets the second half. When we come back, car is still here and the car is cleaned and it's just beautiful. So we go through the day, we do all that stuff. We come back and these guys have worked the car over, and Caesar pats me on the back and goes, oh, John, you really know how to do this. And I said, well, but there's a final piece. And I walk over and I show that the one of the quarter panels isn't quite as well done as everything else. Truth of it, probably could have gotten away with it. And I point out to the guys, hey guys, you missed that spot. And lots of discussion, lots of heated talk, and they clean that up a little bit more and hand them the other half of the 20. So that is a way to make sure that your tipping works to your advantage, and does that. Now, again, it's a ballsy move, but it works exceedingly well and it gets everybody's attention. Now, would it have worked with a 5? I don't think so. 10? No, but 20? Yeah. And of course, people will always say to me, but all you had to do was put money in the meter. Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
And have you ever used tipping as a long-term business strategy?
I have relationships with a variety of different businesses because of the businesses that I own. And there is a bank that I work with, and that branch, because I don't visit it all the time, it's located where one of my businesses. And I wanted to make sure that everybody remembered me. Now they can remember you because of your account balance. You can say, by the way, when I show up, and have your head in the air. But what I started doing early on is there's a Starbucks right across the parking lot from it. So what I do, and I've done all through this for an 18-year period, is every time I go there and see them, is I go and buy a Starbucks gift card. Now, sometimes cash is tight, so we have a smaller amount. Sometimes cash is plenty and business is great. We have a bigger one. And I bring it over and I make sure that the manager knows I'm doing this, not underhanded. They always tell me that I don't need to do it. I say not doing it because, I feel a sense of obligation. I really do love their service. And over the years, they've gotten to the point where when I show up and I do that, they're very appreciative. Now, that's great because I can tell you, that's the smaller banks I've worked with. The biggest banks, nobody knows who you are. And when, Bob Seeger says you're just a number, well, in big banks, you're barely just a number, let alone anything else. So I've done it on a long-term basis. I've done it for an 18-year period, going to continue doing it. My recommendation is if you have any business that you do business with on an ongoing basis, think about what are the things you can do to help people who are there and set it apart and show some respect, show some gratitude, show some courtesy. Another thing that I've done long-term is bring in food. And that gets back to it. It's a longer story than we'll do today, but I used to say, should I bring in donuts or bagels? You tell me which. And totally changed an account from being a disaster to at least having them being open to listen and work hard to solve the problems, which we did for my client. And frankly, if you want to know what really did it, I think it was feeding them. So yes, I've done that long-term and it works very, very well.
And how should salespeople, entrepreneurs, and business owners use tipping to create an incredible experience for their very best customers?
Now, this is where you actually have to do some advanced work. So there was a restaurant in Vegas called McCormick and Schmick. I think they're gone. And what I did was would go there for a business meal. But they had an incredible server, and hopefully if she ever hears this, I mean, she did an amazing job. Her name was Leanne, and we would only go if she was going to be there. Now, we were pitching investors, and what I wanted to make sure is that we didn't get to that awkward point. That awkward point is, who's going to pay for this, who's going to do that. So we got to the point where they would have like little private booths, not quite a private room, but private booths, so we wouldn't be disturbed. And I would go in ahead of time, make sure that she had the credit card. She understood that anybody could order whatever they want to order, whatever the total was. And of course, we're not subtracting all of the things crazy people do. 25% tip. And the point was that the check never hits the table, ever. Now, I had to explain to the manager and then an assistant manager. She got it instantly. And I said, I just don't want it to hit the table. I want them to have this amazing experience. Also, since I didn't want to get into what I was going to order, that was written out ahead of time. I had a business partner with me. We wrote out that order. So she had all that information. And that was an amazing point that we would have with people. Everybody would have this great experience. It worked very well and was successful on an ongoing basis. My suggestion is that if you actually have a business that requires that you entertain, take that to heart, find the right server, find the right team, find all of those things to put all of that together. Because if you do, and yes, there's tipping in there, but tipping is part of explaining to them that this is important enough to me that I'll make sure that you get compensated for your not only excellent service, but beyond belief service. And in fact, one of the things that came out of it is that one of my investors ended up board member saying, John, I don't know how you get such great service. I've been to this place and I think the service is kind of mediocre. And I said, I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit special. All through the time that we were doing that, every meal that we ever had after we got that set up was picture perfect and worked very well. So if you're going to go out there and do these kinds of things, think about doing it that way. Another version of that was I was trying to fill some sales slots in Seattle. I was interviewing a bunch of people. I alluded to the 3-meal rule, and I would come down to breakfast and I would take a booth that was one of those round booths in the corner. That would be where I would sit. 2 or 3 booths over would be what I called the holding pen. I had people scheduled. Lots of times people don't show up on time, traffic, all kinds of other excuses. And what I would do is I would rapid fire interview people and have breakfast with them. And I had set that all up at the restaurant, paid for both booths, made sure that everybody was tipped, and away you went. Powerful technique, and it all rests on one important premise. Tipping is the small price that you pay to get things done when other people are sitting around saying, I expect things to get done, and if they're not, I'm going to spend and waste my time complaining and bitching and moaning. While someone like myself is going through the VIP line, getting escorted through, and stepping through and having an amazing experience. Hopefully you've had an amazing experience today, because we're at the end. This is John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling. And for myself and the ever lovely Sandra, this has been the Raging Verbalist number 183. And until next week, make sure that you tip somebody and tip them exceptionally well and see if it will work for you.